was going to give you a little talk about how I rig my cart up. Now, before I do that, I need to give a credit to the person that I learnt this from. So, and that's get online and look at the Sandman Tackle Talks, Tackle Times, because there's so much information on there. As I've explained a number of times before, I've returned to beach fishing after 25 years away from it, and there is a lot of new stuff that has come out in that interim 25 years. YouTube is a mine of information. I've been to all over the place in YouTube, seen some amazing footage from all over the world, but I have to say there's one or two really good vlogs on YouTube, and you can learn a lot of information from that. And the go-to for me for learning about rigs is Sandman's Tackle Time, I think it is. So let's look at this cart there. Something I learnt again from Sandman's Tackle Time. Never heard of it. In fact, once I saw it on the on his vlog, I thought, cart? What the hell was that? So I did a bit of research and found out more, and came up with a source from it. As I think he alludes to the fact that it's not used in the south very much, so you have to hunt around to find it. But I did find a place, a company called Online Baits, which are based in Chelmsford in Essex, and they do have cart. I will put the link up to their website in the notes to this little presentation. Go online there. I don't think they actually mention the cart bangers on their website, but they do cart bangers, and this is how one of the ways cart comes. Now, cart is a byproduct of the crab fishing industry. It is kind of the waste from the crab, so the guts and bits that you wouldn't want to eat. And rather than throw those away, in the spirit of environmental protection, this is put to good use. And it's put to good use in a number of ways. First of all, they get all the sort of runny bits and they freeze them into these sausages. The online baits call these cart bangers. Another way that they use them is what they call cart wings. Now, these are the more solid parts of the inner workings of the crabs, and basically they are salted and then frozen. So they are, because they're salted, they still aren't completely frozen. Now, I'm led to believe, I haven't done this myself, that this is robust enough that you can actually cut strips of this and tie this onto your hooks as a bait on its own without any means other than a bit of bait acid to hold it in place. I haven't tried that yet, but what I am going to do in a minute, once I finish talking about the cart bangers, is we're going to look at a way that we can actually utilise this in a squid bait to enhance the scent that's going into the water from the squid bait. I'm just going to put this back in the freezer because I don't want it to defrost. I've got a bit here, something I prepared earlier, which I will use for the squid. The thing that we're going to need to use this cart banger so that it just doesn't disintegrate into the water and disappear, so that it's actually sending a nice scent trail out into the water, is we're going to use a bit of finger bandage. Now, you can go to Boots and you can buy finger bandage. So it comes, and you buy it from this is from Boots, but you can get it in most other chemists. Having said that, I did go to a chemist this morning and they didn't have any form of finger bandage. And all we're going to do is we're going to get a bit of plastic pipe, and we're just going to put it over the top of the pipe. And then we tie a little overhand knot at the end there, and it's ready to receive the first length of our cart banger. So that's just a little bit of water pipe from DIY store. I went to the trouble of finding from a catering company sausage making nozzles. It's a little bit of overkill because, to be quite honest, B&Q, get yourself a bit of white pipe. It wants to be the right diameter, doesn't want to be the really thin stuff, doesn't want to be the really thick stuff. It's kind of halfway between, I think it's 22mm, and this will do the job adequately. And then what you do is you take the 4 meters out, you feed it onto this, and so it's all sitting on here, and you'll see the procedure for making this using my actual tool. So we need to open up our bag of cart. Personally, I like to do a banger at a time, so the other one's going to go back in the freezer because I don't want it to start melting because it does smell dreadful. And it's a bit like a genie, once it's out of the bottle, you're not putting it back. I'm going to cut this piece of cart into 3 sections. So using my IKEA knife, which we talked about on the Catch and Cook, we'll cut it into 3 sections. We get our bit of finger bandage, pull it over the end of the applicator, and we're going to tie a little overhand knot on the end there. We want to make this as neat as possible. We don't want lots of dangly bits, but we can always trim it if it's too much. But it needs to be a nice tight knot. So it's a nice tight small knot. Get rid of that loose end. Don't need that. Pull that back up to the end of the applicator, and then we're going to get our cart sausage and we're going to drop it into the applicator. And then we pull it down, whoops, and it's come all the way off because it's only a little bit of bandage I've got left here. And then we tie another overhand knot. And there we have it. We have our little cart sausage. I'll do one more of those just so we get the idea. Put this back on. Ordinarily this wouldn't come off here. It's only because we're getting to the end of this. But you can get the idea that we feed this back onto the applicator. But as I say, all 4 meters would fit on here. Again, bring it down over the end of the tube. Form a little overhand knot. And what we're essentially doing is we're making cart sausages. Now I'm led to believe that there are other ways of doing this. Some people like to use stockings and tights. Other people just wrapping them in tin foil and then I guess pricking the tin foil. There is stuff that comes from the carp fishing people that is used, but I'm led to believe that's a little bit too broad mesh and it flushes out too quickly. Go, just nip that off. Let's see if I can get one more out of this last knockings on this. So we'll tie the knot when it's off the tube, it makes it easier. Might get away with it. And we've got a 4 meter roll inside that box which we can use another day, which is quite handy. Do you like my hat, by the way? I was out in the local town today. In fact, went to town to buy this bandage. And I happened to go into a clothes shop and they had these hats for sale, or in fact this was the last one that they had for sale and I couldn't resist it. Right, so the last one going in, blop, in it goes, and tie that off. And that's the end of that cart bandage. So you can imagine I've used 4 meters of this finger bandage doing cart sausages, so you can see that I've used it quite a lot. Now what I like to do is I like to take those sausages and I like to roll them a bit of tin foil. Now the reason for that is it slows down the thawing of it. It means that when you put it back in the freezer it doesn't all stick together. When you go out on the beach, we'll talk about that in a minute, it goes into a thermos flask and it's easy to get out of the thermos flask. So all I'm going to do is make a little tin foil sausage here. Twist the end, and then just twist between the 3 links in there, so that when you come out, you can pull this whole lot out, rip one of these off, unwrap it, and it goes straight onto your bait. Now, with regard to thermos flasks, with regard to thermos flasks, you get what you pay for, essentially. There are lots of stainless steel thermos flasks on the market, and my experience of them are that they don't keep your drinks warm, and they certainly don't keep frozen things cold, because they're cheap and they're not very good. If you're going to have a thermos flask that works, you need to get one that comes from a proprietary brand, and thermos flask, that is the best that I've found. Now this is a food flask, so it's a slightly wider neck, it's only a small aperture. if you want to make sure that your cart's going to stay frozen, stick this in the freezer the night before. Don't put the lid on it, just leave it in the freezer without the lid on, so that actually it's really cold anyway. And then you put your cart in there and it will just fold in out of the way. Lid goes back on. And that will last the fishing trip. Everything is frozen solid in there, and I've not had one fall out on me. And then when you need to get a cart out of there, you pull the long sausage out, rip the tin foil, rest goes back into the thermos flask, and then you unwrap your cart sausage. So there we are. You can see that this is actually starting to thaw out already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these other two into the freezer so that they stay frozen. Right, so how do I mount this on my hook, I hear you ask? Well, there's a number of ways you can do it. You can prick the hook through the finger bandage, fold it back on itself and whip it on with bait elastic. The downside of that is once you put a barbed hook through this bandage, when you come to re-tackle, it's an absolute pain to get it off. And also there's a tendency this will rotate round and end up masking the hook. So the solution that I've come up with, and this dates back to the days when I was an active fisherman, this is going back sort of 20 or 30 years, there was a system that you could purchase which had a bait pin on it. And all I've done is I've made a bait pin. So I had a bit of stainless steel wire, I put an eye in the end of it which is offset at 90 degrees. I've left a little bit of the tag end in, so actually there's two pieces of wire that are going to protrude into the bait, okay, which will stop it swivelling. And it's going to be secured onto the hook by feeding it over the eye of the hook, like so, and then it will lie along parallel to the hook, holding the bait there. And you can put any other worms, squid, cuttlefish, sand eels, you can wind those up with bait elastic around this cart sausage, because this is dissolving all the time it's in the water and it's giving off a scent trail, and what you're essentially trying to do is to attract the fish to your bait. Cod will take this as a bait, but it probably only lasts in the water about half an hour and then it's just an empty sock. So the way that we're going to do this then is we're going to feed this down the side of the cart sausage, so it goes through works better when this is hard. It's going a bit soft. Come on, get in there. Feed through the bait sausage, through one side of the bait sausage. Second pin goes in. Okay, you've got the eye protruding beyond the bait, and as I say, when it starts to melt, it does chuck a little bit. That goes through there. It lies this alongside the back of the hook, and then to secure it in place, you've got a little bit of silicone tube on the line. You've also got your pennel hook. Slide this down. I'm going to get this back in the freezer pretty quick because it is melting under the camera lights. That tube goes over the end of the wire. Pull that in nice and tight. Your pennel hook will be hooking into whatever ancillary bait you've got on there, and this stays there nicely in line. Make sure that the hook is clear because we're going to whip it in with bait elastic as well, but you can see how that holds that on the back of the hook. And when we come to rebait, all we need to do is just unattach the wire, pull it out, pull the remains of the finger bandage off, and you're ready to go, nice and quick. Okay, I need to get this back in the freezer because it is happening a little bit. It's amazing how quickly that thaws out in a warm house. Right, so let's have a think about this. These cart wings. Now they come in a pack, as I showed you. They're packed in salt. So even when they're frozen solid from the freezer, they are still a little bit malleable, soft. We're gonna cut some strips of this. Now you could, as I say, wind and bind this onto a hook. just, you know, it's part of a cocktail bait with other bits and bobs. But I'm going to look at an alternative. So we've got some strips there cut. We want a squid. Here's one I prepared earlier. It's a little bit wet because I've had it in some cold water just to help defrost it. First thing you want to do is you want to take the quill out of it. So we get this out. It's amazing when you take these out that this is a natural made thing, because it looks like it's made of plastic. It's transparent. There must have been a use for these sometime in the past. I can't think what, but yeah. And then we're going to use the squid envelope to actually pack some of this carp in. Now in South Africa, where they use a lot of squid, they are very adamant that you need to beat the squid meat or the squid flesh a little bit. It helps release the juices from it, makes it more supple. And then we're going to feed our bit of carp into that squid envelope, and then we're going to tie it in so it stays in there, because we want it leaching its good smells out into the water. Now I've not used it for this, but I would suggest that smoothhound fishing, when the smoothhound run, this would be an ideal bait for smoothhounds, because they like squid but they also like crabs. So what you're doing is you're actually making the best of two worlds. Now when I'm bait elastic something that's fairly sloppy like or flexible like this, I like to put a wire through it just to give it a bit of stability and rigidity. So we'll put our famous wire pin through here, all the way down to the head. Just means it makes it easier to wind the bait elastic around it. And then we get a good old bait elastic and we tie this all in. And we want plenty of bait elastic. We want to go up to the open end of the envelope at the quite early doors to stop the juices coming out, so they're nicely trapped inside the squid. And then we're just going to tie this in place all the way up to the nose, back out again, all the way down. Try not to scoop the tentacles up. Maybe you want to get the head involved in this a little bit to try and hold it together, because otherwise all you end up is whiting, stealing the heads off your squids. Now this is something that you could do this on the beach, but it's also something you could do when you're at home, if you can do it without making too much of a mess. And now once you've got that in place, again we want a bit of tin foil just to wrap that up. You go into your bait box, so that, take the pin out, we don't need that in there anymore, so that comes out. We've got this lovely bait, right, it's nicely tied up, and we're going to wrap it in some tin foil, just again, so that when we freeze it, 'cause I'm going to put this back in the freezer now, so this will come out as a frozen bait. Okay, it just isn't stuck to everything else, so it keeps them independent of each other. Okay, and there we have it. That is a carp packed squid.